Section 7. Harper's Young People. Volume 1. Issue 1, November the 4th, 1879. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Harper's Young People. Volume 1, Issue 1, November the 4th, 1879. Section 7. The Story of a Parrot. The children were thinking of something very important. Anybody could see that. Papa and Mamma wondered why they were so serious and silent at the breakfast table, and Mamma was astonished when Carrie, and even little Hope, begged to walk part of the way to school with Louis, because they had never thought of doing such a thing before. Louis was a bright-faced, rosy-cheeked boy of 10 years. Carrie was 8, and little Hope was only 6. Mamma was always very kind to her little folks, and as the morning was sunny, she said they might go if they would put on their heavy shoes and their cloaks and hoods, for there was a white crisp frost all over the grass. Mamma watched them with pride as they scampered down the garden path leading from the piazza to the street. But had she heard the conversation, she might have stayed at home from the party she was going to that evening and put a veto on their grand plan. "Now, Louis," said Carrie, as soon as they were away from the house, "you know you promised to sit up with Hope and me tonight and listen, because nurse says at midnight all birds and beasts talk so children can understand every word, and Papa and Mamma are going to a party, so they won't come home until ever so late." "Nonsense," said Louis, who felt very much wiser than Carrie, she being to his mind only a girl. "I don't believe the nurse's story. I can always understand what Fritz says, and I say he cannot bow-wow any plainer than he did this morning when he bid me good-bye." "Yes, he can," persisted Carrie. "Nurse says so, and she knows, for her grandfather told her all about it when she was a little bit of a girl, and he was a real old man. If people believed it so many years ago, it must be true." Louis's confidence in his own wisdom was somewhat weakened by the thought of nurse's grandfather, but, boylike, he only began to sing tauntingly. "Into woods where beasts can talk, I went out to take a walk." "I'm going to stay awake anyway, and talk to my kitty," said little Hope, "because I know what nurse said is true. I saw my kitty laugh when she heard the nurse say it." Carrie was silent. She walked at Louis's side, kicking the pebbles of the gravelled path with her feet. "Oh, if you girls are going to make such a fuss about it, I'll sit up with you," said Louis. "And if nurse's grandfather said so," he added, hesitatingly, "perhaps it is true after all. He was a very old man, and he must have known." "Of course he knew," said Carrie, "for nurse said he had a cow, a red and white one, that told him lots of things every year on this very night." After the mention of the red and white cow, Louis made no more opposition, and the children soon separated, Louis to spend the day in school, while Carrie and Hope scampered home, said their lessons to Mamma, and then went to play with Fritz, the big dog, Bess, the white kitty, Lorito, a large gray parrot, and the new canary which Papa had bought only the day before. When evening came, Papa and Mamma went to the party, and nurse, who had forgotten all about her grandfather and the red and white cow, wondered why the children went to bed so willingly, for they were sometimes very willful, and made nurse a great deal of trouble when she undressed them. She was very glad they were good tonight, because as Mrs. was away, she had made up her mind to go to a party herself, the housemaid having promised to run up to the nursery if she heard the children calling. There was little danger, however, that they would call for a drink of water or anything else that night, for as they were not in the least sure of nurse's sympathy in their midnight vigil, they had agreed to go to bed as quiet as mice and watch their chance of slipping unobserved to the library, where their pets spent the night. Long after nurse had gone downstairs, and when the house was very, very still, Carrie sat up in bed and gently called her brother, who slept in a little room of his own adjoining the nursery. "Louis! Louis!" she said. "Oh, don't bother," answered Louis. "It won't be midnight for ever so long." "But if we stay in bed we shall go to sleep. Hope is half asleep now." "No, I'm not sleepy," said little Hope, "and I'm going to get my kitty and go right down to the library this very minute." She rolled out of bed and went to the basket in the corner where Kitty was fast asleep, and bundled her up in her little fat arms. The children all started to creep downstairs, but they shrank back a little from the dimly lighted hall below, which somehow did not look a bit as it did in the daytime. "Come on," said Louis, who felt very grand as the protector of his sisters. "I've brought my new bow and arrow, and if there is a villain there, you'll see how quick I'll lay him out. I'm not afraid anyway, where Fritz is," he added, half to himself. They marched along very softly, their little bare feet sinking into the soft velvet carpet. Louis went boldly ahead with his bow and arrow. Carrie followed, her jet black hair streaming down over her white nightdress, and little Hope came close behind, hugging her white kitty, who winked in astonishment at this strange proceeding. When they reached the library, Fritz, who was stretched on the Turkish rug before the grate, in which a piece of English coal was burning slowly, rose to his feet, amazed at the unusual sight. But he was too lazy for a frolic at that hour, and after a soft woof woof, he lay down and went to sleep again. The library was dimly lighted, and wore an air of wonder and mystery to the now excited children. Reek, the canary, was curled into a little round yellow ball, and paid no attention to his visitors. Lurito was perched in a big gilded cage in the corner, had his beak buried in his feathers and his eyes shut fast. He opened his eyes, however, when the children came near, and put down his head to be rubbed, but after a few sleepy grunts he said, "Poor Lurito, poor Lurito," and shut his eyes again. Evidently the children's pets had no inclination to be sociable just at present. Just then the ormolu clock on the mantelpiece struck 10. "We shall have to wait ever so long," said Louis, "because they won't talk till midnight. Let's lie down on the rug with Fritz." So the three children cuddled close to the big dog and waited. Louis pulled Mamma's blue and red afghan from the lounge, and after tucking it carefully over his sisters, crawled under it himself, and "Bow wow," said Fritz. "Who's got a story to tell, I wonder? I'm not going to tell one, that's very certain, for I scratched my throat this morning with a chicken bone." "Mew, mew," said the white kitty. "I've done lots of work today. I unwound a big ball of green worsted for my little mistress, and I'm tired. Let someone else do the talking." "Peep," said the canary. "I'm a stranger. I only arrived yesterday. I ought to be entertained. Some other time I will tell you all my adventures, but tonight I prefer to listen. I would like to hear from that gray-coated gentleman over there in the corner, for he is a very distant relation of mine, both of us belonging to the great bird family. I would, I am sure, take great interest in his history." "Lurito, you will have to do all the talking tonight," said Fritz and the white kitty both at once. "Tell our new friend Reek all the wonderful things you have seen, and all the strange adventures you have been through." Thus entreated, The gray parrot, after flapping his wings several times in a lazy manner, began to tell his story. "I will begin my story," said the gray parrot, "with the good old times when my grandfather and grandmother lived in the hollow of a giant tree which grew in the valley of the Congo, whose broad waters flowed downward through the wilderness of southern Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. My grandfather belonged to a very large family, which was increasing rapidly. Indeed, the gray parrots of Africa, with their magnificent crimson tails, are the chief glory of the country. The children of my grandfather were very numerous, and no father was kinder or more skillful than he in providing them with an independent establishment. For he believed that young people should always set up housekeeping for themselves as soon as possible. As soon, therefore, as my father was old enough to be married, and grandpa saw that he had already selected a pretty wife, he immediately found him a convenient hollow tree on the very shore of our beautiful river, which he showed to papa and mamma, saying, "My children, here is a fine place for your housekeeping. Make your nest at once." Papa and mamma were a very affectionate couple, and they aided each other in the work of nest building. Papa brought the materials, moss, twigs, and soft grasses, and mamma arranged them artistically in the interior of the hollow tree, making a pretty and comfortable apartment. The nest was soon complete, and housekeeping began. Papa and mamma were not a moment too soon in their preparations, for no sooner was the nest constructed than it contained 3 eggs. Beautiful little eggs they were, papa has often told me, and mamma never contradicted him. I was in one of those 3 eggs. My brother and sister were in the other 2. Mamma kept us warm with the greatest care, while papa brought her food like a good husband, always choosing the particular fruits and other delicacies she preferred. As this attention allowed her to brood us constantly under her warm wings, we soon became ambitious to escape from our shells. One beautiful morning, to the great delight of my parents, I burst the delicate prison walls which confined me. My brother and sister made their appearance in the world a day later. To be continued. End of section 7. Recorded by Julia Lenarden.